This week's episode covers an indie game PR nightmare for a notorious e-commerce site, an international organization that just added an indie dev to the top of its executive team, and an interview with the director of a $100 million global esports fund. The Indie Games podcast starts now. This episode of the Indie Games podcast is brought to you by the Esports Business Summit. It's happening September 18th, 2019 at the University of South Florida. Join investors, business executives, and esports companies from around the country to learn esports 101 and discover how you can be a part of this exciting, explosive industry. Visit www.usfesports.com for more information. Welcome to the Indie Games podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Howard, the CEO of ProjectMQ. ProjectMQ is a multimedia search engine for the world's best independent video games. We help indie devs sell more indie games, and we help gamers easily find video games they'll love. My twin brother Malcolm is not on this first episode of the podcast, but he will be joining us in the future. Our goal for this podcast is to be a weekly series that highlights major news and events happening from the previous week that affects indie games across the entire ecosystem. VR to blockchain, console, mobile, everything in between. So you can expect to hear some discussions about things that have happened that are important, and also for us to be introducing some interviews with people who are noteworthy in the industry. So we want to bring their unique perspectives and insights in, everything from investors to indie developers, publishers, service providers, everyone who's involved in creating, producing, selling, and otherwise making indie games happen. If you enjoyed this episode and want us to keep making more of them, please like, comment, and share this so that all the algorithm magics can do all the cool stuff. Thanks. So without dragging this on too much further, let's jump right into the first topic. E-commerce platform G2A is under fire again from indie devs, with ongoing accusations that they knowingly contribute to the gray market sales of indie games at the direct expense of indie devs. G2A works like eBay, and on eBay you can buy or sell equipment below the market rate of those objects. On G2A, gamers can buy or sell keys for games below the market rate of those games. Platforms like Steam allow game developers to generate a bulk volume of keys to their games so that the devs can use those keys however they please. Devs will either use those keys to raffle onto their social media accounts to generate engagement and new followers on their social media accounts to promote their games, or they will give those keys to journalists and streamers so that journalists can write articles about the games and streamers can stream those games on platforms like Twitch and YouTube. Devs will also sell those keys at a discount to sites like Humble Bundle. And what Humble Bundle does is it takes an assortment of game keys, it bundles them together, and then it sells those bundles at a discount. So you could hypothetically pay $5 and get a bundle of 10 games at a much deeper discount than if you paid for those games outright on platforms like Steam. Unfortunately, what happens is that after all these activities, a majority of those keys are then ending up on platforms like G2A. Now, when a developer sells their game on Steam, they get 70% of the revenue for the market rate of that game. When a game is resold or sold on G2A, the developers don't get any of that revenue. There's a ton of responsibility to be shared here across the ecosystem. Developers are definitely primarily responsible for how many keys are being generated and who those keys are being sent out to. But G2A could definitely do a better job of managing how keys get onto their site and how developers are involved in that process. Instead of them fully addressing the issue and properly addressing the issue, they're really shifting the topic and changing the subject and pointing blame back at the developers. And the developers have gotten fed up. They've recently put together over 5,000 signatures demanding that G2A stop selling all indie games on their site. And in an effort for G2A to improve their image, G2A actually tried to pay a bunch of indie outlets to do sponsored ads that were pro G2A, and also requested that those articles did not indicate they were sponsored ads. And now all of that's gone public. It's become a PR nightmare. G2A is just kind of digging themselves a deeper grave. I'll keep you posted more on that story as it develops. In other news, the International Game Developers Association just brought on an indie dev to lead their professional organization. The IGDA has over 10,000 members worldwide and just appointed Renee Gittins as their executive director. Renee Gittins runs her own indie studio in Seattle, Washington, and I find this to be a really interesting choice because indie developers make over 75% of the games in the gaming industry, but only 2% of the revenue. So it'll be interesting to see how Renee brings her perspective and her experience to help grow the future of this organization. In the last segment of this podcast, I shared an excerpt from a recent interview I did with Dave Martin. He's the managing director for a $100 million investment fund that invests exclusively in the video game and esports industries. I'm working on a really cool project that I can't quite share all the details about with yet, but this interview is a smaller portion of that larger project. In this clip, you'll hear Dave discuss his fund's investment philosophy, his background in video games and blockchain, and how he's bringing all of that together to help lead this exciting new initiative in this explosive industry. Once the excerpt's done, I'll share how you can get access to the full interview if you're interested. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dave Martin.
Albert, yes, it'd be fantastic. I'd love to talk to people about what we're doing and how we're different, but also how we're complementary to VCs and other funds out there. You know, we're not here to take the space. We're here to support the sector. So, collaboration is a big part of what we want to do with the right funds. Absolutely.
That's excellent. I think you really have a strategic advantage here for the U.S. because I'm generally critical of the U.S. innovation ecosystem here because I know what Silicon Valley and the U.S. used to represent as a whole, and unfortunately the last 10 years or so they've gotten away from that. So when you look at things like fintech, which I know you have some experience in, I want to ask you about that later, and in gaming, there's a lot less happening here in the U.S. market than there is globally. And
yes.
So as more people are starting to understand what this means and finally see the larger picture, I think the first funds that get into this space and make themselves known and have the credibility that you have can very easily start to get funds or investments from people like Andreessen Horowitz and all the major players here in the U.S. market.
Yeah. It's interesting. I see a lot of likenesses between, the whole kind of fintech space and some of the, let's call it gold rush mentality that happened by some of the large investor families and institutions. And the kind of, it wasn't boom and bust, but the kind of, some of the valuations and some of the things that happened, I see some likenesses, and there's probably some lessons in here for the sector to ensure that we don't end up in a situation where everybody jumps on very quickly and says, I don't really care where I get in, I just want to get in, and then suddenly realise that that they've overpaid and they've forgotten the standard principles of investment, and all of a sudden there's panic and people then start pulling out, and then the sector suffers, because VCs start fire selling shares they've got in entities, and everything gets a bit strange. So I think there's a big lesson to learn there. I saw that kind of play out a little bit in fintech in some of the early stages. Now it's a lot more sophisticated, but there was a period of time where some companies were getting valuations that were just crazy. Just crazy. So yeah.
I agree with you there 100%. And it's interesting that you started in blockchain and then moved into this gaming space because I did almost the reverse. I grew up playing video games. On me, I have my Super Mario Brothers 3 NES cartridge in my sports coat. I keep it as part of my pitch. And I always tell people that I've grown up with digital items and currencies. So when I first actually heard of Bitcoin, I heard about Bitcoin before blockchain. When I heard about Bitcoin, I ignored it because it was just another digital currency to me. And then about 3 years ago, I made the connection that Bitcoin is actually powered by blockchain, just like, you know, AOL is powered by the internet. It's an application. It's the first commercial use. And once I understood, I bought my first half of Bitcoin in 2014. Long story short, it was on a Russian server, and I lost all the money to maintenance fees, rather. So I didn't do anything else with it on the crypto investing side. But once I understood the technological revolutionary potential of blockchain, I was 100% all in. So talk to me a little bit about your journey first with blockchain, and then how you segue from there into gaming.
Yeah, okay. So let me probably start with, I have a similar story to you. I am 41 years of age, born 78. I started playing video games in about 86. So I come from an era of Spectrum, Commodore 64, Atari, Amiga, then NES as we know it, and SNES, Mega Drive, Master System, then Mega Drive. I've had, you know, many consoles. I still play. I play predominantly now console games. I have an Xbox, so I'm still an avid gamer. You know, quite interestingly, in the UK back then, strangely, if you got to a certain age and you were pretty good at sport, and I played soccer, I was a good football player, you kind of gave up video gaming and you played sports. I carried on doing both. I ran competitively, I did martial arts, and I did sports. I played video games a lot, and I always liked them, and I still do now. In fact, 25 minutes ago, I just finished a FIFA match with a couple of friends of mine, and I will go back to FIFA after we've had this conversation, because it's just where I am. But you know, so I've always played video games. I've always liked them. I've always enjoyed the community feel. I found my way into online video games around about Call of Duty Modern Warfare, so COD 4, 2007. I suddenly realised it opened up a whole new world of very many things, you know, community spirit, but obviously, you start to see the commercialization of not just games, but communities starting to come through. So that was kind of ticking away in the back of my brain. And I'd already watched some CSGO stuff before, and I'd seen a bit of all that kind of, you know, the marketplace for it, but I'd never really kind of took a deep dive into what was going on. But I come from two backgrounds, really. One is being a government advisor, so I've spent a lot of my life around education and skills, advising government officials, ministers through companies that I've worked for, both UK and internationally, about skills development and skills requirements. And that led me just into an international scene where I spent some time in China. I saw a bit of the esports scene out there in China. And at the same time, I was kind of segued into, because of the kind of skills part being in the finance sector, into a role with an organisation called the FinTech Circle. What became apparent for me when I got into the FinTech world a few years ago were two things, really. One was the kind of considerable amount of organisations that were springing up in the fintech sector because they had brilliant ideas. They often either worked for financial institutions or the wider finance insurance sector and had great ideas, but were stifled by the jobs that they were in, and then broke away and said, hey, look, I want to go and do something different here. I kind of want to set my own company up. But they had little experience and little support to get them over the line. So that was the kind of first thing I saw. And then the second thing I saw was the fact that we needed to create international links between not just fintech companies, but the those fintechs would represent internationally. So, how do UK companies get into China? How do UK companies get into Africa? What do those markets look like? How do we add value to them? And equally, how do we reciprocate that relationship and bring kind of turn the table and bring fintechs from other countries into our ecosystem? So they were the two bits of the fintech world that intrigued me. And I did the two major things I did on both of them. One was we set up what we call accelerator, and you'll know as incubator or accelerator hubs for the fintech sector, something that I absolutely implore the esports sector to be looking at, and to be looking at seriously, which is how do you create spaces for whether be it indie games developers, be it those that want to create tech solutions for the esports sector, community-based solutions for the esports sector. How do we find places for them to be housed, to be supported, to be funded, to be guided by people in the sector to create great products that support the development of the sector? And that's a win for the sector. But of course, for those that run those accelerator hubs, be them VC funds, be them university hubs or businesses, what they get is an instant pipeline of great businesses that they might want to invest in and support and be part of through the kind of value chain. So there's a replication thing there between fintech and esports. And then on the other side, for me, it was the kind of international bit. So there's something now established called fintech bridges. And they are basically regulatory and business-to-business bridges between governments, country to country. So the UK at the moment has 6 formal bridges, and their alliances. There's one in Hong Kong, one in China. They have 2 separate ones because of dual law. There's one in Singapore. There's one in Australia. There's a tentative one in the US and one in Canada. What they do is they break down regulatory barriers. They break down trade-related barriers and create instant ins country to country for the companies they represent. That includes trade events. That includes financial support. Again, incubator, accelerator opportunities. So, that was kind of my fintech world. That's the bit that I'm particularly supporting, and I still support to this day, although albeit now in an advisory capacity rather than a director role, because I've got way too many things on. So sorry, a very long-winded answer, but hopefully it just gives you a bit of a flavour.
That's just a short excerpt of my full interview with Dave Martin. If you enjoyed what you heard and you'd like to hear the rest of it, you can unlock the full interview by supporting us on Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/ProjectMQ, and for just $1 a month, you get access to the full interview as part of our patron exclusive premium content. You not only get access to the rest of that interview, but all of the other premium content that we have available there. This ends episode 0 of the Indie Games Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we're interested and eager to learn what you think about this episode and this podcast series. What did you like about it? How can we make it better? Please be as candid as possible. We really want your honest opinions so we can make this series both entertaining and informative for you. If you enjoyed this episode and want us to keep making more of them, please like, comment, and share this so that all the algorithm magics can do all the cool stuff. Thanks. That's it for this week. Next week, we're going to take a week off because I'll be taking Sadie and the kids to St. Augustine so that we can spend some time with my parents and grandparents on a little family trip. But we will be back soon, hopefully in 2 weeks with another episode. Thanks for your time. Have a great week.